Abby, good to see you. We have a spooky one today, understanding phantom income and its scary tax implications. Few things sound scarier than phantom income. You would think any kind of income would be good, but this one and the taxes that come with it can take a lot of investors by surprise. Let's start high level. What is phantom income?
Yeah, I think we should have probably done this around Halloween
Yeah.
instead. But here it is almost Christmas time. So this is a good time to start learning about and understanding how to look for phantom income. And its name is pretty descriptive. So it is income that hits your tax return without actually hitting your pocket, which is the worst kind of income that you can have because you're taxed on it. It affects the taxes on your other income sources, but you don't actually get to use it or save it or invest it. It just flows to the tax return. Oftentimes unnecessarily. So that's what we're going to talk about today: how to find it, how to avoid it, and past examples of when this was a big problem. Like in past years, in 2022, it was a huge problem with certain funds throwing off this phantom income, and ways to avoid that in future years.
But just to ask this question again, make sure I'm understanding. You are on the hook to pay taxes on money that you never actually received.
Yes, exactly. So a good example of this is with certain mutual funds. So mutual funds have these things called capital gains distributions. They are typically at the end of the year or close to the end of the year. Sometimes they're throughout the year, but the big ones typically come in December, which makes it difficult if you're doing other tax planning. For example, Roth conversions, making sure you're staying within the right tax bracket. If you're Medicare age, not wanting to bump up into those IRMA surcharges, these capital gains distributions that are not necessary, you don't get to use the income, can throw you off, can throw your whole plan off. And a lot of times it comes from not exclusively mutual funds, but those are the big culprits of unnecessary capital gains distributions. Because what happens is throughout the year, the fund manager is buying and selling funds. And other people that own that mutual fund are buying and selling the shares of the mutual fund. That the way mutual funds are structured, that affects everybody that owns that fund. So even though maybe you didn't sell any of your shares, you held them, you get penalized essentially for the other moves that were made in that fund because you're all kind of in it together.
Yeah.
That's the way a lot of times mutual funds work. Some of them have this worse than others, but a lot of people will remember in 2022 when the market was pretty shaky, they had all these gains on their tax return. One of my clients had $25,000 in capital gains distributions
Oh,
that she did not even realize. She had no idea that it was happening. She had to pay penalties on her
before she
Medicare
was your client, we should say, right?
before she was my client. Yes, this was one of the things that I helped her understand. She
Yeah.
came to us and she was like, I don't understand why this happened. So we were able to educate her on the types of funds that she was holding in her, and this is very important, in her non-qualified account.
Right.
So this is going to be a joint account, an individual account, potentially even an account that's held in a trust. But it's non-qualified money that you're going to need to kind of dig through and see what holdings you have in those. Those are the ones that need to be as tax advantaged and as tax efficient as possible, because if it's in an IRA or a 401k, it doesn't have these issues. So it's kind of sheltered. It's got that bubble around it until you take the money out. But with a non-qualified account, even with a bank account, if you're earning interest like in a high yield savings account, that's going to flow to your tax return. And it's the same thing with mutual funds held in a non-qualified account.
Yeah. And again, just to underscore something else, what you pointed out when we were talking offline is that it is income too. So it affects possibly your social security, pensions, right?
Yes. So this is counted as income. It's taxed as capital gains. So you do get a little bit of a break there. So typically people are going to pay 15% on capital gains. That's a pretty, if you're way high income, you could pay 20%. If you're really low income, you could pay zero. Most people are going to fall in the 15% range. That's what you're going to pay on that. But it pushes your entire income up. So if you think about having, in this example, $25,000 more in income, you could be paying more tax on your Social Security. You could be pushed into another Medicare IRMA surcharge bracket. It could increase taxes you're paying on your wages. It could exclude you from certain tax deductions, tax advantages. There's a whole domino effect that can happen when we have this unnecessary income on our tax returns.
Yeah, it really is scary. So how will I know then that I'm paying this tax? Am I looking for it on my tax return?
Yes. So for a 1040, what you're going to do, I wish I had a visual for this, but what you're going to do is look at the first page of your 1040. I have an example here that I'm looking at. You're going to go to line 7. It's going to say capital gain or loss. Loss is in parentheses, and see if you have anything there in that box. If you do, you're going to want to go to your Schedule D is what it's called. And that's where you can kind of see the breakdown of everything. You can see, okay, is it from buying and selling that I have those capital gains, or was it from phantom income? You're going to want to look at 13 of your Schedule D. That's where you're going to see, it's called capital gain distributions. 13, box 13. If you have anything in that box, then a review of your phantom income needs to be done, and to see if you can maybe even keep similar investments if you like the investments that you have, but put it in a more tax efficient method.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was incredibly helpful, Abby. So I know, again, clearly you focus on strategic tax planning. That's why you know all of this. So how do we avoid this phantom income?
Yeah, and it's really, this is a good example of how everything flows into each other. It's really, like
Yeah.
I say, a domino effect. So what you're going to want to do is use a good strategy that we typically recommend is using ETFs instead of mutual funds.
Mhm.
They are much more tax efficient, especially when held in a non-qualified account. Be careful though when you start to do these conversions if you're going from mutual funds to ETFs, because you might have a lot of capital gains in those mutual funds that you haven't realized yet. So be mindful of that. That's where a really good advisor can come in and develop a plan of how to get you to a more tax advantageous place without incurring a bunch of taxes that you don't need to. Another really good way to avoid unnecessary phantom income is to hold individual stocks in a non-qualified account, if
Mhm.
that's within your risk tolerance, of course. But those don't have these capital gain distributions like
Mhm.
mutual funds do. So
Mhm.
stocks are a good place to go. ETFs are a good place to go. So those are the top 2 strategies that I would recommend for avoiding phantom income.
Mhm. And just to say it to everybody watching, if your advisor is just talking about your investments and not talking about whether you are being tax efficient, it is time for a new advisor. So, Abby, you know so much. You're such a great resource. If somebody wants to talk anything through with you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can always give us a call at 678-442-0255, or you can visit our website at theretirementfamily.com. Send us a message. Let us know what's on your mind. If you want us to do a phantom income review of your past several years of tax returns, if your advisor's not doing that for you, we would certainly be happy to do that. Send us a message. Let us know what's on your mind. I was having a conversation with a client yesterday who had a previous advisor for many, many years, but they didn't do this type of planning, which
Yeah.
is why they switched to us. And
Yeah.
we were talking about how it's not what you earn, because they did well. Their investments did well, but there was a piece missing, and that piece was tax planning. And it's not what you earn; it's what you get to keep.
Yeah.
And that was what was most important to them, and that's what's most important to us as well.
Yeah. Essential. Abby, thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin.